Welcome to Here's My Thing. My name is Frankie Salazar, and Sydney Sweeney is making headlines yet again. And it doesn't look too good for her this time, not that it ever really does. But her most recent controversy involves the American Eagle ad that she did for blue jeans. Now, millions took to the internet to call the ad not only racist, but that it was promoting something that is called eugenics, which we're going to define in just a second. Some are even going as far to say that it is promoting what's called Nazi propaganda, of all things, and Hitler. Before we get into that, though, let's take a trip back to May of this year. And for those of you who recall, Sydney Sweeney was paid by a company called Dr. Squatch. Now, Dr. Squatch is a soap brand. And in the ad, we see Sydney Sweeney depicted in a bubble bath. And in the bubble bath, she addresses the desired clientele as what I guess you would call, or I guess in her words would be, dirty little boys. Go ahead and take a look for yourself.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Watch.
Now, these dirty little boys that she's going to be selling to, you might be wondering, well, Frankie, what product is she going to be selling exactly? And that product is going to be none other than a bar of soap containing a special active ingredient. No, it's not, a scented fragrance. It's not talc. It's not, I don't even know what else goes in soap. Beeswax, rosemary oil, things of that sort. No, it was going to contain her very own bath water. Yeah. So we already can kind of tell what Ms. Sweeney's modus operandi is when it comes to the branding and how she associates and depicts herself in her ads. Now, back to the American Eagle jean ad, we see that Sydney Sweeney is sported in a jean coat with matching denim pants, and she's sporting a vintage car, and she's talking in a very raspy, seductive voice. And the problem is, Miss Sweeney says that, quote, it is a general misconception of her success, being that she's just, a sex symbol, and that she, quote, doesn't have the ability to control her own image. Which I do think is kind of fair, you know what I mean? I do think that's fair because you have a lot of people who, particularly men, who are in their early to mid-20s, maybe even pushing... do men really ever grow out of their perviness? Do you get what I'm saying? I don't think they ever really do. So I guess she could be selling to these people all the time. But the thing about it is, when you're somebody that is, referred to or commonly known as a sex symbol, and as we all know, in at least America and the world, that we've learned not even recently, since the early 40s, that sex is what sells. And Sydney Sweeney is just somebody right now that is seen as a desirable young lady. But the problem here is that, according to Vanity Fair, which is my source for all of the information that I'm about to give you, the ad is reminiscent of the controversial Brooke Shields Calvin Klein ad dating all the way back to the 80s. Now, the problem with the Brooke Shields controversial ad is that it was very seductive and very, leading things to the imagination and trying to concoct in your brain a very sexual undertone. But here's the problem. She wasn't even legal drinking age. Wait a minute. Oh, she wasn't even legal voting age. She wasn't even legal driver's licensing age. She was 15. Okay? So, from the jump, this ad is already going to be very controversial because why, in the brains of the American Eagle CEOs and marketing team and everything, they're going to be like, what we're going to do? We're going to take an already very controversial girl, put her in front of a whole bunch of pervy men, and make an ad as an homage to the 80s, where an ad that was over-sexualized was depicted by a 15-year-old girl. So that's already the first problem here. Now, as for the American Eagle ad, it is very controversial because Sydney Sweeney uses the phonetic language for the word jeans being denim and genes being genetics, which is exactly why the world turned upside down, seemingly overnight, with people saying that it is an egregious display or what's referred to as eugenics. Now, according to Google, when you look up the dictionary from the definition of the Oxford language, Eugenics is the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable. Developed largely by Sir Francis Galton as a method of improving the human race. Eugenics was increasingly discredited and unscientific and racially biased during the 20th century, especially after the adoption of its doctrines by the Nazis in order to justify their treatment of Jews, disabled people, and other minority groups. Now, this all transpired after, in the ad, Sydney Sweeney says that she has, quote, great genes. And in the ad depicted in the imagery that's, hanging off of Fifth Avenue in New York, it says, Sydney Sweeney has great genes. She continues by also saying that, quote, my genes are blue.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
Now, the problem here is that it's a play on words for, like I said, we covered a few minutes ago, genes being the denim and genes being the genetic part about it. But what I don't understand is, whether it's racist or not, it's just such a stupid way to depict that. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. Like, if your genes are blue and we're using it as a euphemism for your genetics, what about your genetics is blue? None of that makes sense. But you know what else doesn't help her case? It's the fact that people were able to deduce that she was a registered Republican in the state of Florida. And to add insult to injury, which, again, being a Republican in and of itself, in my opinion, doesn't just make you straight up evil or inherently racist, but to add insult to injury, she threw a MAGA-themed birthday party for her mother's 60th birthday. And do you want to know what the party favors were? They were red hats with the homage, Make America Great Again. But instead of saying Make America Great Again, they said Make 60 Great Again. So she's just asking for it at this point. But here's my thing. Am I able to see why people could think that this ad has eugenic and racist undertones? Yes. I don't think that, I think it goes without saying that it's evident that could be something that people didn't just pull that out of thin air. Do you get what I'm saying? But do I think it is? I don't know. I have a little bit of a problem with that because I'm not somebody that tries to look at things like that. And perhaps, like a lot of people that said that if you weren't able to see that it was a eugenic propagandist ad and whatnot, perhaps you're just a little uneducated, or maybe you don't know, or maybe you're underlyingly racist. And I'm like, oh my God, like, if I'm not able to sit here and have a constructive conversation with you without you just outright calling somebody racist for not being able to see that, in a way, the same blame could kind of be flipped, because it's like, why would you inherently want to believe that that's what they were doing? So like I said, I'm not certain that that's what they were doing, but I'm also not saying that that's not what was happening. I just find it hard that in the big 2025, after all of the racial biases and discrimination and everything, people are taking a big stance against it nowadays, that a huge mega corporation such as American Eagle would do something like that. For a couple of reasons. Number one, not only is the founder of American Eagle, but the current operating personnel and owners and operators and everything are Jewish. And whether we like it or not, Hitler, had a problem with the Jews. Not only did he have a problem with them, he mercilessly murdered over 6 million of them back in the 30s and 40s. So why would a company that is primarily Jewish and donates to their causes, per Google, want to do something that's going to be promoting eugenics, which isn't even part of their own heritage? It doesn't make sense, in my opinion. But on this show, if you're an avid watcher, or even if you just know me in real life, I'm somebody that likes to be middle ground. Whether I'm right-leaning or left-leaning on a certain topic or whatever it is, I like to try to play the devil's advocate and see people for who they really are. Now, I have heard that in the media that Sydney Sweeney has had, whether she herself or her family have racist issues in the past or tendencies or whatever. The problem is I'm unaware of it, so perhaps I'm a little uneducated on the topic, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But like I said, playing the devil's advocate, I personally feel for Sydney Sweeney a little bit, because the problem is, whether we like it or not, when your name or your brand or your family or whatever it is that you associate with Trump or the MAGA movement, what's going to happen is, whether we like it or not, Trump won the populist vote. Okay, not only did he win the Electoral College, he won the popular vote, which he did not do in his first two terms, or not first two terms, first election, which he did win. He ended up losing the popular vote, but then ended up getting the Electoral College by the grace of God. And then in the second term, when he was going to go against Joe Biden, it was an absolute landslide, deservedly. And then the third time around, the Americans spoke, and it wasn't a complete landslide, but the majority of them came about. Over 75 million of them, to be exact. Now, I can't sit here for 1 second and just believe that 75 million hardworking Americans, many of which are people of color who swung to the right side, are just outright crazy racists and homophobes and all of this stuff. But I will say that the problem is, when this Sydney Sweeney ad came out, the worst of the worst came out. You had these absolute loser hicks with beards and hats and drinking beer and shit coming out of the woodworks saying that liberals were mad because it was a hot girl in jeans doing an ad. That is not why they were mad, dumbass. And you are just the creepy, weird, pervy people who happen to support Trump, who make it your whole identity, that make people, the hardworking 75 million Americans who voted for that man, look bad. But that's the thing about the media, is that anything that's attached to Trump is evil. But the problem is, the reason that people believe that is because they forget that everyday average Americans, including many that are gay and people of color and whatever, voted for him because the media is only going to put out the absolute radical morons who are just literally trying to jork it to f***ing Sydney Sweeney in this ad. And I can't take it anymore. But I can't, you know? Now, according to Sydney Sweeney, she, in her own words, has to take these kind of deals to make ends meet, to maintain her luxurious SoCal lifestyle. Now, for those of you and I who are watching that are just regular normies, obviously her day-to-day expenses in a lifestyle like that, we can imagine, are very expensive. Whether you want to call her a Nepo baby, or she's lucky, or she's arrogant, or she's rich, and yada, 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 yada. She says that she couldn't take a 6-month break from doing what she does because acting could not take care of the bills. Because when you're a celebrity like that, and keep in mind, Sydney Sweeney's not like an A++++ lister. She's not pulling in many millions in these deals. In her own words, she has to take these deals. And the problem is, Sydney Sweeney, in my opinion, like I said, here's my thing. I think that she is just the face. You know, she's the scapegoat for these dumbasses and frankly idiotic, disrespectful, tasteless people at the top of these companies that are representing her, because they know that she's going to bring money in, because America is in a patriarchy, as we know, and men tend, not all of them, you know, but men tend to think with one thing, okay? And it's not exactly up here, if you get what I'm saying. So the problem here is that they're going to abuse her. I don't know why my voice is like tripping out today. I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta take a sip. Maybe that'll help us out. But the problem is, like I said, Sydney Sweeney is just the face of this kind of stuff, and they are going to make use of, I mean, it is irrefutable that Sydney Sweeney, regardless of her color, is an objectively attractive girl. She's got symmetry, she's got body, she's got figure, she's very approachable, very pretty, big eyes, whatever you want to say. You know what? I don't care. But I'm not one of the pervy Trumpies that's trying to glaze her. But here's the problem. The CMO, or the Chief Marketing Officer for American Eagle, said, quote, "The campaign is definitely going to push buttons and have fun and probably be a little more sensual than what we've been in recent years, with this underlying optimism and humor that only Sydney Sweeney can bring. Isn't that beautiful? So basically what that gentleman was saying is Sydney Sweeney is desirable to these pervy, junky Trumpies who live in the middle of nowhere. Again, I always mention Tennessee. I don't know why. Let's just say that they live in Alabama, right? And they just want to pretend that they have a blonde, big, blue-eyed girlfriend for the weekend. And the problem with all of this is that despite all the backlash, you would think when you have millions of people saying that your brand is promoting eugenics, something that the Nazis literally pioneered pretty much, what do you think American Eagle stock price did? Go ahead, take a guess. You have this huge, controversial, multi-million-dollar company making use of a very controversial girl. What do you think happened to their stock price? If you guessed that it soared, in Vanity Fair's words, you would be right. And as unfortunate as that is, we've been fooled. And you take, I'll go ahead and try to see if I can find the clip now of Bethany Frankel talking about what people don't understand about marketing is that, and Trump is the master of this. Say what you want about him, but when you have somebody, and these companies that are so just faceless and nasty, like I said, Sydney Sweeney now became the face of this stuff because do you think the higher-ups are taking the fall for this? No! They're laughing all the way to the bank because now, after this, Donald Trump even endorsed it and said that when he found out that she was a Republican, he loved the ad, conveniently. So it's like, what is going on? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, what is going on? Like... After that endorsement, I guess you could say, from President Trump, the stock price soared. And like I said a few minutes ago, the best person that understands this about press and about media and about attention is Donald Trump. The problem is, no press is bad press. Or I guess all press is good press. Or bad press is bad press. Because guess what? It's still press. And when we have the CMO saying that it's going to push buttons, they clearly intended for this to be very controversial. Now, like I said, do I believe that they thought that it was necessarily going to blow up into some Nazi stuff? I don't know. I really hope not, because if that was the intention, again, it just doesn't make sense because you're a Jew. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's like, it doesn't make sense. You get what I'm saying? So, I don't know. I just, that's my little rant on this. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like I said, I feel for her because I don't think that she had any say-so in what the actual scripting and what the desire of the marketing officers were. Maybe she was more part of the creative process, and maybe I just don't know, and I'm just, again, like I said, playing devil's advocate here. But at the end of the day, this has been Here's My Thing, starring Frankie Salazar. As always, I would love to hear your thing. Do you think Sydney Sweeney had more of a play in it than I'm anticipating that she did? Or do you think that the higher-ups of American Eagle anticipated that this would be something that would get a lot of backlash and Sydney Sweeney just happened to take the fall for it? Do you think that she's painted in a bad light, or she's genuinely somebody that isn't maybe the best behind the scenes? And, you know, do you believe that just inherently being a Republican makes you have all of these issues and whatever and controversies? And do you think that people of that political affiliation deserve that kind of attention and or hate or whatever? And I really want to know, what do you think of the fact that their stock price soared? I mean, it's crazy to me. But anyway, like I said, I will see you guys in the next one.